Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Other Side Chronicles. I'm your host, Stephen Sherrick, and I live right here in the heart of the weird and wonderful little settlement known as Burien, Washington. But I was born and raised in the shadows of the Ozark Mountains of Missouri and Arkansas, where the hills hold secrets and the nights are filled with whispers. Pull up your rocking chair and pour yourself a strong cup of whatever brew might comfort you. Then lean in close, because these stories we're telling don't wait for the light of day. Welcome to the Other Side Chronicles. And so it begins, y'all. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Other Side Chronicles. We're right back here in the good old weird and wonderful Burien, old Burien, actually, in the Highline Heritage Museum in the studio today. And I'm super excited because I've got an old friend here that we haven't seen each other in a bit.
It's been a couple months.
It's been a few months, and new baby.
6 months old now.
6-month-old baby. And look at him. He looks pretty good for that. Anyway, Dai Kim, welcome to the Other Side Chronicles.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm a little scared, but
No, I think we'll be fine. This museum is haunted. And I always say that. I'm not trying to keep people from coming to the museum because it's totally safe, but it is haunted. And you go back a few episodes, you'll find, matter of fact, the very first episode, and we've also talked about that in other episodes, but the museum is definitely haunted. Anyway, I'll give some props on the museum later. So Day and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and we've worked together on one of the films that Day and his entourage has been working on. That somehow I got sucked into it, and have been part of this film, which has been an amazing experience. And we won't talk about that today. Maybe another time. But because of that, we've spent some time around the campfire together. And you know me, everyone, I am always good for a ghost story. And so when we're around the campfires, it doesn't even have to be around the campfire for me, but that's always a great place to tell some ghost stories. And Day has shared some of his stories and about where he's from. And anyway, so I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit, can you kind of tell us a little bit about where you're from, and maybe as a young person growing up, how some of these stories have affected you and got you kind of interested in some of this stuff that we're going to talk about today.
well, it's funny because I was driving here knowing what I'm asked to talk about and just trying to get my mind ready of like, okay, it's been a while since Seattle's a very, I think we talked about this a little bit, compared to Hawaii, where I grew up, is kind of a spiritually dry place, I would say. Ghosts are definitely here, spirits, all of that, but it's not like a part of my life that I really tap into living in Seattle. I've been here a little over 10 years now, compared to a place like Hawaii where you grew up listening to stories, it's part of the upbringing. In high school, what we did on the weekends besides going to the beach was literally go ghost hunting. And so it's very ingrained in the culture. I think in the South it's probably the same. But here where it's very tech heavy city, it's become that at least. These type of topics aren't really approached often, I would say.
I would say the only thing I would disagree with you on a little bit is if you talk to indigenous people from here.
100%. Yeah,
And
for
then
sure, for
because
sure.
they have their own myths, they have their own legends, they
Yep.
have their own ghost stories, right? That were told to kids. So it's similar in some ways, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of parallels there. Even the Korean culture I grew up in my household, there are a lot of superstitions and things you don't do. And just that I don't know if I want to call it like the spiritual world, but the supernatural is something that you don't really question if it's real or not, at least with the culture I grew up in. Here, it's I guess people are starting to get into tarot cards, but like that's
Mm.
I would say like the new gentrified Seattle.
Right.
You're not. I mean, there's not a lot of churches here. I'm not saying like religion and the supernatural is exactly, goes hand in hand, but um it's a very like heady intellectual. That stuff is all voodoo. Again, I'm not talking about old Seattle. Definitely not talking about indigenous Seattle. But I'm mainly talking about, and maybe it's the space I work into. I rub shoulders a lot with the tech world.
Mhm.
I don't work in tech, but a lot of the folks that I work with in my business, I work in video and production. We interact with folks like that a lot. And it's just, again, I mean, again, maybe they are starting to get into astrology, but like it's very
Mhm.
elementary.
Sure.
And so when I met you, I got excited because, I think it was kind of like when we first started to get to know each other and we're finding some common ground. We both like baseball,
Mhm.
we're hitting it off, and then I don't know which one of us brought up ghosts, and we're like, oh yeah, we can talk about this for hours.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I think also an interesting part of your story is too. You have kind of the mix of cultures, right? So you
Hmm.
have the Korean culture, which has its own share of
Hmm.
those stories, and then kind of mixed into where you grew up, right?
For sure,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not native Hawaiian. I'm born and raised in Hawaii, influenced a lot by Hawaiian culture. But Hawaii, my parents ended up there. They grew up in Korea. My mom's full Korean, my dad's mixed, half black, half Korean, but very much ingrained in the Korean culture, being born and raised in South Korea. And so they ended up in Hawaii because it was a place where a lot of cultures were melted together, especially Asian cultures, East Asian, South Asians, and Hawaii. I mean, even when it comes down to the food, we have Korean food in Hawaii that only exists in Hawaii, not in Korea, not anywhere else.
Well,
Like meat jun, for example. Uh, it just, yeah, it's a melting pot. It's a place where a lot of these things kind of intermix with each other. And so when people ask me culturally, how did you grow up? It's not quite traditional Korean. It's not indigenous native Hawaiian, but there's like a blend there that I think it's a common story for a lot of people.
so what's your first memories of the Hawaiian ghost stories? How did that first?
Oh man, I mean, every school in Hawaii has its own set of ghosts. And even the teachers themselves say like, "Hey, don't come on campus at night. There's spirits here." Of course, that just prompted us to
Of course.
going at night
Yeah.
and interacting with stuff. I also grew up pretty, at least in middle school, early high school, pretty religious, and I grew up in a charismatic church, which just means spirituality, exorcism, demons. That was very much part of the religion. A lot of stuff that I don't really interact with these days in my current life. But I think when you mix the belief of that with kind of the Hawaiian urban legends, you get a brain that really believes that a lot of this stuff actually happens, and personal experiences too.
Mhm.
To answer your question, I think the earliest memory for me was actually at home. Have you ever heard of something called kawi?
Maybe
Yeah,
explain.
it's basically it's sleep paralysis,
Okay, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
and people experience this. There's scientific explanations for this. Um, but my mom was going through some, I don't know, spiritual warfare or something, and she'd often wake up
It's like
from a
there's
nap.
someone in the room with you, like
Something's in the room. Yeah,
yeah.
my one of my earliest memories, my mom told me she woke up from a nap on the couch, couldn't move. My dad was on the other side of the room, couldn't open her mouth, and she was like, "Okay, this is kind of weird. Maybe I'm half sleeping. I can't do anything. I can't say anything." And all of a sudden, she says that she saw this lady in a white gown covering her face, like walking around her head. And
Mm.
she couldn't yell, she couldn't ask my dad for help, and she just had to wait it out until it fully went out of her vision, and then she could move again.
Oh,
Which, I mean, hearing that as a kid,
yeah.
you're like, that thing is in this house. My brother would hear knocking all the time
Yeah.
on the walls, on the doors. Um, a couple of times my mom heard it too, and nothing was hitting it. It just, there's a lot of things that we couldn't really explain. And I know I mentioned that I grew up kind of religious. My parents didn't. I was one of the weird kids who got invited by a friend, and so I was the only Christian in the home.
Wow.
And so my mom, it's not like my mom was like writing that off as like, well, the devil's attacking us or anything like that. It's just my mom could not explain it. She was not a religious person.
Right.
I would probably try to explain to her like, oh, we need to pray more or something like that.
Mhm.
But we all experienced it, and our explanations were all different.
Right, right. So, okay, so that remind me if I'm wrong here, but when you said about the white lady, isn't there some legend about the white lady
You know,
that's on the highways
that's
or on the roads or something?
that's funny because I didn't put two and two together until right now. I don't know why, but yes, there is a lady in white, and I've since learned that a lot of cultures have their own versions of the lady in white.
Hmm.
But in Hawaii, um, and I just want to preface this by saying I'm not a native Hawaiian culture expert, and
Right.
so apologies if I get some part of the stories wrong. But
Mhm.
my general understanding as a local boy who grew up in Hawaii is that, um, especially on this highway called Poly Highway, if you carried pork in your car, which is taboo, kapu as they would call
Mhm.
it. It's something that you do not do. It upsets the elders, it upsets the ancestors, and it's something that you don't do, especially in that area. Um, there's a good chance that you'll drive by a lady in white. Some folks say that's Pele, the volcano god.
Mhm.
Some folks say it's something else. But there have been many folks who have seen this person, seen this figure. And the legend goes, if you see her on the highway, on the side of the highway, you have to pick her up. And the instruction is you pick her up, you do not look backwards, you do not look in the rearview mirror, and you just drop her off where she says she needs to be dropped off, and you go about your day. If you ignore her, she'll pop up again for a second time, and that's your second warning. And if you ignore her for the third time, story goes, she'll just end up in your car anyway. And you can imagine the rest is
It's
history.
not good.
Yeah.
So, okay, I got to jump back. What's the deal with pork?
Pork. This is an area where I don't want to butcher it.
Okay, all right.
But I do know. I'm not 100% sure if Hawaiians were just completely not allowed to eat pork. I don't think so because we eat a lot of pork in Hawaii. We
Mm-hmm.
love our Kahlua pork.
Yeah,
It's probably one of the most like it's like the highest pork consumption state in America, other
yeah,
than
yeah. Well,
uh,
that's what I thought, and
you're
so they
right.
did. Yeah.
But there are certain areas where you don't
Uh-huh.
bring pork around,
Okay,
and Poly Highway is one of those
all right,
areas.
gotcha. So let's jump back to what you said earlier about ghost hunting when you were a kid. So what did that look like? What did a night of ghost hunting look like?
We'd oftentimes that happened after Friday night youth group, which is so funny because here we are praying for our sins and repenting and speaking in tongues, and then youth group would end around 9 p.m. It's Friday night. Back in the day, kids did stuff together and it wasn't that dangerous, especially in Hawaii,
Sure.
and being in Hawaii, there's not a lot to do. Stereotypes are true. We spend a lot of our free time at the beach or
Mm,
fishing, surfing, but at night the options become limited. You're
mm,
not going to do those things at night. And if you didn't want to spend your Friday night hanging out at a Walmart parking lot, which we often did, um, a suggestion that often came up was let's go ghost hunting.
mm,
And so there are certain spots in Hawaii, specifically on Oahu, where I'm from, that are known to have ghosts. One in particular is a story about this girl who got murdered by this tree near this tree. And if you go there, you can see her if you close your eyes when you go to the tree. So we often try to find that tree. Um, but yeah, those are one of many things that we try to hunt for, and with the purpose of experience something supernatural. One time in particular, we went to this high school called Aya High School. Their mascots, the Na'ali'i, named after Hawaiian chiefs, and it was known that there were many spirits on campus at night. It was built near some burial grounds, and we went. And a couple times, it could be my imagination, it could be something that didn't actually happen, but we've seen things,
mhm.
we've experienced things, and um, even to this day, uh, most days I doubt those kind of things exist, if I'm being honest. But those are some moments where I think back and it's like, it's hard to like make sense of experiences I've had like that in my childhood.
So what did you experience? What did you see?
Uh, well, we saw, go figure, a person in a white robe.
Mm-hmm.
It felt a little floaty, not so much Caspery, um, but it was on the second floor of the gym, which we snuck into. Um, and it's a situation where we all saw what we saw. We none of us said anything, and we immediately sprinted to the car. Um, we started driving away really fast, and it took about 10 minutes for one of us to be like, "So what was
What
that?"
the heck was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's a situation where it's not like one person in the Scooby Squad came back and was like, "Hey, I saw something," and then
Right.
we had to go confirm that we all experienced the same thing and we left at the same time. And it took a while for us to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Fast forward a couple years later, actually, it's just a couple years ago. I mentioned I work in video production. I got some funds to do a Hawaii ghost hunting show.
Well,
Um, and maybe I should have led with that, but I went around with a couple of native Hawaiians actually, and my brother. My name is Day, as you
mm-hmm.
mentioned, and my brother's name is also Day. It's half of our full name, but we go by that. It's easier for people. Um, and the show was called Day at Night.
Mm-hmm.
It was funded by some crypto bros, so which it was around the time crypto first crashed, so the show never saw.
Oh man.
Yeah, but we have a lot of raw footage.
Yeah.
And every episode, we picked a different haunted spot. And we went to explore. We filmed the whole thing. And one night in particular, we went near Poly Highway looking for ghosts. And one of the stories we hear growing up are stories about the night marchers.
Yeah.
Night marchers are um, deceased ancestral Hawaiian warriors. Some people think they're menehunes. It's to my knowledge that it's separate. Menehunes is also it's more of like a spiritual, like miniature people, Hawaiian guardian warriors.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of people believe the night marchers are like the actual Hawaiian warriors. I think Jason Momoa has a show coming out soon about um, the Hawaiian takeover and all of that, and the soldiers that died trying to protect the islands from colonizers.
Cook and all those guys.
Exactly,
Yeah.
James Cook.
Yeah.
We do
Mhm.
not like that guy.
Yeah.
But we had high hopes that we'd experience something going to the Poly Highway area because, as I mentioned, that's a very spiritual place. It's a place where no matter who you are, when you drive on that highway at night, you're kind of, let me just put it this way, you're not falling asleep on that
Mm-hmm.
drive. You know,
Yep. A lot
you're
of awareness
a lot of
happening.
awareness.
Yeah.
And we were there and we went deep into the forest. Again, cameras are on, we're all mic'd up, and we went to this tree. We were feeling it out, vibing it out, and all of a sudden, one of us starts hearing the sound of drumming. And again, another situation where we all heard the drumming. You can see the footage. We all start freaking out. And the native Hawaiian guy that was with us just looks at us and says, "We need to leave now." And so we left. The drum sound, it sounded very like rhythmic. It was just like almost like a slow drum roll.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we all knew growing up the protocol for that, which we didn't do because we're too scared, is that when you hear drumming and you're outside, you're supposed to lay and pretend you're dead, and you're supposed to piss yourself in humility.
Mm.
We did not do that.
Well, I'm disappointed that you didn't, because that would be a lot better story. But
Yeah, you can hear the drum in the audio too, very faintly. And there's no cars around, there's no parking lot. It's a pretty vegetated forest situation. Um sure, maybe there's somebody waiting out there that had a drum to scare kids, but like it's really there's nobody lives there,
right, right.
and so um to this day, that group of people, which, we became fast friends, and we talk about that a lot. Remember that night we heard the drums, and We went to a local Zippy's after. It's a diner there. We debrief what we heard. And even right now, as I talk about it, it's something that we'll never forget because we went to look for something and we heard it. And I think the previous like religious part of my life, when I encounter things like that, there's a sense of guilt a little bit that I'm like kind of testing the spirits. I'm testing these um uh the supernatural side, the ancestral side, where um we're a bunch of young people looking for trouble,
Kind of poking the bear a little
poking
bit.
the bear, exactly. And
Yeah.
we watch movies all the time and hear stories where like you poke the bear is gonna follow you,
Yeah.
um I think life in general has been okay and it doesn't feel like too cursed,
Hmm.
but there's definitely fears of that for sure,
Right.
where you play with the Ouija board, you'll and to this day, like honestly, like I won't touch a Ouija board. Like that's I I I I can't I can't 100% say that all the stories I hear are always true. It's not like I'm obsessed with it, but I believe it enough where I don't poke anymore. And
Hmm.
even doing that show in general, I felt like was pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been there. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this show, and and there was some of that. It's part of that growing up Catholic. And the whole exorcism
Hmm.
thing, and
I've seen exorcisms.
actual.
Oh yeah, I've seen Korean mothers. I mean, the only explanation other than exorcism is they're having a mental health crisis, Because I've seen them like on the ground, mouth bigger than I've ever seen it, wailing out. I've had random women in Hawaii. Um, you when I say we're into church, we're very into church. Like we'd go around Hawaii praying for random people. Like that's the kind of like high schoolers we were. I mean, it sounds crazy being in Seattle, but like that's just what you did in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Like most youth were part of some kind of youth group. Um, the history of that was, stemmed obviously from colonization, and so there's a complex history with Christianity and Hawaiian culture. But today it's very ingrained in Hawaiian culture. Like most Hawaii people are Christian and they go to church, and they have those type of values and beliefs, right? And so we often went out and about and prayed for folks that in our minds God was compelling to pray for, right? And so there's this one instance where we're praying for this guy who told us he wanted to kill himself. He was at a bus stop. It was probably 11 o'clock at night. It was on Kamehameha Highway, and it was right across the street from this Chuck E. Cheese. I know exactly where it is. And we asked if we could pray for him. He was like, wow. He opened up to us saying that he was praying to God that like if God didn't show him a sign, he was gonna take his life that night. And he asked if we're like angels and guardian angels. We're like, no, we're just like regular people. And we're like, oh wow, like yeah, like, we're good, we're here. Like we gave this guy a sign, we gave him some hope, obviously energized. Probably like half a football field away, this woman was walking. Kamehameha Highway is huge, right? And so we could barely see her. Um, Definitely, we're talking like this. There's no way we could hear each other. That's how far she was. But she was just screaming, just like, "Oh, I fucking hate you!" Or sorry, maybe you can bleep
Yeah,
that
no,
out.
no bleep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I hate you. Bleep, bleep, bleep. And in my mind, I don't know why I assumed that was his wife and they had some kind of dispute and she was mad and I believe that so much where I asked him, I was like, hey, like, do you know her? Like, should we pray for her too? Are you guys okay? I mean, we're like 15 years old.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why am I getting into someone's like marital business?
Right. Right.
It's just like part of his naivety.
Yeah.
Um, and he just looked at us. He goes, I don't know her at all. And I'm like, all right. Then I was like, oh, she's just a crazy person.
Hmm.
Ignored her after that. Okay, maybe we'll go by her later if we feel compelled. Probably not the safest situation, but whatever. We're praying for this guy, And all of a sudden, her voice starts to change. It gets lower, and every we were when I say we're praying for this guy, we're like whispering, you
Mhm.
know, we're like our hand is on his back. We're like, hey, God loves you. You know, he told us to pray for you because you needed a reminder of that, and blah blah blah. We're doing the whole spiel, and again, like I'm talking like this, and this lady is very far away. And all of a sudden, my friend started to notice everything we were saying, she would rebuttal. So I would say, like, hey, so God loves you. And she, in her most demonic voice, goes, he's lying. God doesn't
Oh
love you.
my
And I'm
God.
just like, what in the heck is going on? And so this is going on. And the 15-year-olds in us, like, we were like hearing this, and we were like, oh, we gotta pray more. Like this is spiritual warfare, you
Mhm.
know? And so we started praying more. She was, and then she started getting personal. She was like, she called my friend out by name, was like, Josh, like, I know your grandma just died, and like this and that. And like we were freaked out now. And we're like, this is weird, something's going on. Um, we finished the prayer with him. We're like, I don't, God, I'm sorry, we're not gonna go to that lady.
Is
But
she
like,
coming towards you?
no, she just was pacing
Yeah.
back and
Okay.
forth.
All right.
Um, and I don't know, maybe the only explanation is, again, I'm always trying to like rationalize like how that's possible other than the supernatural. And I'm like, is there a mic at this bus stop? Like, is she like how is she hearing what we're saying? You know? I mean, if we're talking like this, just across the museum, no one's gonna hear our
Sure.
conversation,
Right.
you know? Fast, that's not even where the story ends.
Okay. We're with you.
A couple months later, my my friend Josh, who was with me, who I grew up in church with, he lives here now in Seattle. He had to visit a friend in the mental hospital. His friend had a mental breakdown, was going through his own stuff, and he just went to visit. As he was talking with his friend there, he was also with his younger sister Grace. Um, his friend, I'm forgetting his name, said, "Hey, I want you to meet some people I've met here. They're really nice." He brings Josh over to this woman and says, hey, I want you to meet my friend Josh. She's an older woman. And she looks at Josh right in the eyes and just immediately goes, I know you. Again, this is months later. I don't know what she looks, this woman at the bus stop looks like because she was so far away. I could not draw you a picture of her. I could not maybe I know like at most like her body type, and like I can barely tell you how long her hair was, you know? She looks at Josh and just goes, I know you. Immediately Josh knew who she was for some reason. He just felt it inside of him. He's like, oh my God, it's this lady. Josh was like, hey, okay, like nice to meet you. And she just goes, yeah, I know your other grandma just died last week, which is true. And then she goes, and I know where she is. She's in hell.
Oh my God.
And Josh's sister starts crying. And Josh goes, I rebuke you, like I'm leaving. Like it was so uncomfortable. It was so messed up. And again, like who is this lady? Like how does she know these things?
I,
Josh leaves the hospital, immediately calls me, explains everything. We get together, we pray, and I'm just like, I don't know what. I mean, talk about poking the bear.
yeah.
It's just like it's a story that we bring up time to time. Um, and it's just like we have no explanation
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Well, that one sent some shivers. I don't get shivered much, but that one was good. And we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back here in just a second. More stories. So we talked a little bit earlier when we were just having a conversation about like stories that different cultures tell their children. I know for like me, where I'm from, we had certain things that uh, the grandparents or parents would, and there were stories that would maybe keep you from n- not going too far out into the woods late at night,
Hmm.
and and a lot of them was based on truth, that there was something that had happened in the past that had created the story, and then then it just grew into something that, um, and like, and it don't necessarily have to be ghost stories, but they get to just. So, what are some of the wild and crazy stuff that maybe your parents or grandparents threw on you as
Yeah, it's a lot of accidents happen at night. You can imagine going to the beach and night swimming, you're not able to gauge the tide. Well, actually, unfortunately, my friend's kid just gone missing at the beach. It's safe to say she drowned, rest in peace. But I bring that up because those things can happen, and the nature wildlife can get dangerous if, especially when there's no light. So I definitely could see um some hidden motive on some of these stories. Kind of circling back on the story about finding that tree that was haunted where the girl
Mhm.
died. I'm remembering now. The name of that place is Morgan's Corner, and um, yeah, the story goes that there was a car broken down on the side of the freeway, and the boyfriend girlfriend was in there, and um, the boyfriend went to go look for help because it was the middle of the night. They had pre-cell phones, and the girl just waited. She fell asleep in the car, and she woke up to a tapping sound on the roof of the car. She thought it was rain. She kind of ignored it. It didn't go away, and then she eventually got woken up to by the police, asking her to come out. Like, there's some questions, and she was like alarmed. There's ambulances there, and the story goes that um, the dripping sound on the roof was actually her boyfriend's blood being hung from that tree, right near where they were parked. That tree is still haunted to this day. It's also really hard to get to that tree, and
Mhm.
I definitely could see that being a story being passed down
Sure.
because um, you don't want kids.
Out
ex-
parking
exactly,
and right.
exactly. But it's one of those things where it's like I question sometimes. It's like maybe has the story been passed on so much where we just believe the legend versus like the intent. I don't think it's anyone's current intention to share those stories as just a preventative thing to keep kids safe,
Right,
because everybody I've talked to fully believes in that.
right, right.
You don't. I used to see Ouija boards at the local Barnes and Nobles and Borders books when that was
Parker
around.
Brothers,
Parker Brothers
yeah,
and
sold them as a toy.
100%. I
Yeah,
think they
yeah,
still probably do. And
yeah.
but my friends and I in Hawaii, because that's our lens, our POV. Like, we never knew how that game made any money because you couldn't find a single person in Hawaii that ever dared to buy that game.
Mm,
Like, it's just something you don't do.
yeah,
Going to the mainland, I can see how they're in business and people buy that all the time.
right.
People love to poke the bear.
Yeah.
Um, but something that I do really believe to this day is the more open you are to the supernatural and spiritual world, the more likely you would experience something like that. I think it's been a handful of years where I've personally experienced something. I actually do believe there's a ghost in my house as we speak.
Hmm.
I feel like it's friendly.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not in a place in my life currently where I'm like out searching for that.
Right.
And I also think that attributes to my lack of experience recently with that side of uh, the realm.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, we were very we fully believed. We fully believed that was true, and we went to look. And so, it was also during a time where I was very religious, and I think that probably played a factor. I'm not saying that that means it didn't happen. I guess I'm just saying that as you know, like it, if you're closed off to that, like it's hard to experience stuff like that.
Yeah. One thing that what made me think about it when you were talking about on the being of the beach at night, and I know you're not indigenous Hawaiian, you were born there, but isn't there a lot of shape-shifting stories too
Hmm.
in Hawaiian culture about like shark
Hmm.
part?
Hmm. Lono, the shark god, was like shark and god, and um, of course Disney kind of mutated a little
Sure.
bit, and there's Moana now, and
Right, right,
there's some
right.
stories about that. There's also a lot of like Hawaii is really big on orbs, And
Mm.
so like a lot of pictures you take, there's like floating orbs and stuff. I mean, that's
Spirit
pretty.
lights, we call them back home where I'm
Oh
from.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so I actually have a good friend that I met doing the ghost show. Um, and he is one of the most like well-known ghost story historians, older gentleman. I'm trying to shout out his Instagram, but he basically he is the guy when it comes to he does like a ghost tour every week for tourists.
Mm,
He's native Hawaiian. Um, and man, he has taught us so much, you know. He used to be a Freemason too, so he
mm.
has that background. I didn't realize the Freemason history in Hawaii as well. Um, but it's just again like it's really really hard to grow up in Hawaii and not encounter some kind of spiritual phenomenon.
Hmm.
Just because it's part of the everyday life.
Sure. So I ask this a lot to people that are on my show. Um, and I know it's a tough question but I have to ask it. So you say there's a ghost. You think that there's a ghost in your
Mhm.
home, and I've been around. Feel like I've been around. What do you think the reasoning you feel like is you feel like a lot of the different ideas are someone that can't move on and they're stuck in somewhere or they're what do you think like what's your feeling about it like what
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, is it like do you watch horror movies?
all the time.
I mean, I'd say Japanese ones are probably one of the scariest ones. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is like rooted in like unresolved grudge or like extreme pain and sorrow,
Trauma.
trauma.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I believe that's kind of the spirits that stayed around
Hmm.
is kind of this like this where we get the whole like you're being haunted by somebody,
Hmm.
you know, I'm gonna get you in my afterlife kind of situation. Somebody moves into a house that there was a lot of trauma, that spirit is still there, Beetlejuice style, you know.
Right.
um but these days I don't know, you know. I so my current apartment is actually a renovated church.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
It was a huge
Speaking of
church.
trauma.
Exactly.
Yep.
And our literal like living room window is really cool. It's in the shape of like the original stained
Oh,
glass.
wow.
And they turned it into a window. And you know, we're just my partner and I, you know, we're about to have this kid. We needed a bigger space. It had a lot of rooms and like again, like it probably renovated maybe like converted 4 or 5 years ago. So it's pretty fresh. Um, but I knew like moving into this space, there's a chance, you know, and sure enough, I've seen kind of like fast movements like in my
Hmm.
peripherals. Um, and but I'm also in a time of my life where I'm not really like looking for that. I'm not
Sure.
poking. And
Yeah.
so my partner has seen that as well. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if you felt this, but when I've encountered situations like that, I either have an initial feeling of like I'm scared or I'm at peace.
Hmm.
And maybe you can write that off as like, is it a good spirit or a bad spirit? Is it anger or not anger? And this one that's in our house right now feels very peaceful.
Mm.
And that's why I started thinking recently. I was like, well, maybe they're all not just like vengeful,
Hmm.
seeking, like, I'm gonna get whoever moves back in here, like, I'm gonna troll them, I'm gonna whatever. And so I'm not sure. I'm not sure
Right.
anymore.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think that um that there's energy too. That it
Hmm.
could be just the energy that's left over, like what's the right word I'm looking for? Like an echo
Hmm.
of that. Like here in this museum's haunted. There's a lot of the volunteers and the director, and there's so many stories. And like there's some items in the museum, like there's a bench that's down there that was in a one of the original Highline schools. And it was they know for sure this bench was used to punish kids. So kids were set on that and they were punished. And
Ooh.
and so there's been several sightings and sounds and things around this bench. So maybe they're actually it's that energy that that bench holds that's kind of an echo of what had happened one point in time. Who knows, right?
I think things are getting
Yep.
convoluted
Yep.
too. It's crazy. 5 years ago, nobody believed in aliens. Now it's just like a fact, right? And so I think people group a lot of those things together of things that you can't really
Sure.
explain. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if, like, I mean, this energy conversation is getting pretty scientific, I think,
Mhm.
recently, how
Mhm.
our bodies, our beings are just energy,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so, um, yeah, I can't really explain it. I think if it was just feelings and goosebumps, I think it'd be easy to explain it off as just, I mean, I'm not saying it's just energy, but like the fact that I've seen with my eyes, like lady in whites, my mother has, it's people have seen sightings of people who have been dead and coming up in like graveyard sites in Hawaii. The drumming that we heard, uh, it feels more in like the ghost
Mhm.
category,
Right.
of like something's going on. Watching the exorcism of my friend's Korean mothers,
Right.
shouting out curse words that I've
Sure.
never heard them say, and then as soon as the exorcism done, they go back to normal,
Mhm.
never having an experience like
Wow.
that again.
Yeah.
And so I've had friends prophesy in church, which sounds very woo woo, but have said things about our peers when in that state that folks have never shared before, and it comes down to things that you just can't explain.
Right.
Um, I know Seattle definitely has its share, especially in the indigenous culture, but like, you walk by the market at night,
Hmm.
um, you walk to any graveyard,
Right.
there are definitely things there.
Yeah.
But I think when corporations like start to cement themselves in the culture, and that kind of openness
Mm.
is less prevalent, I think it's harder to experience those things.
I totally agree. We're out of time.
We can talk about this for a lot. You need to do a show in Hawaii.
Yeah, it would be cool.
Uh
Are you gonna pay my way and put me up and
well, if you ever do, I'm remembering the expert now. I want to shout him out. His name's Lopaka.
okay.
And I'm telling you, get him on the show. He
Yeah.
has thousands of stories. He's
Okay.
native Hawaiian.
Yep.
And I still, to this day, I view him as kind of like a spiritual mentor. Anytime I have questions about this stuff, I hit him up.
Lopaka, hear me. We're gonna get you on the Other Side Chronicles. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
It's been awesome.
I'm scared now.
All right, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Don't forget to tune in every Friday night at 6, and don't forget to support the Highline Heritage Museum. They do some amazing things here, and go onto their website. They need your support. So see y'all later. Bye bye.